Hello everyone. Today we're going to be going over Chapter 9, How to Use Flexbox Layout for Responsive Web Design. So what is Flexbox? Well, Flexbox is a CSS layout module designed to make it easier to design flexible and responsive layout structures. It allows you to align items dynamically based on the container size. So before Flexbox, you would have to use floats and positioning, and it was actually quite cumbersome and tedious, and frankly took a long time to get everything positioned on a web page. So let's go ahead and take a look at using Flexbox. First, I wanted to point out one thing here, one quick note. Just as a review of the concept of separation of concerns. So here we have our HTML, right? And we just have, this is our structure, right? HTML is all about structure and content. So here's our structure and content that we're going to be using for this first demonstration here, okay? As you see, there's not a lot of other things to do with presentation in here. It's just the structure, right? So what we did was we separate out the presentation into our style sheet, right? And that whole idea of separation of concerns is just a basic software design principle, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look here. So our first div, this is our parent div, has a class container, right? And our child divs of container is the parent, and here's our child divs. And they have a class of box, right? So that's what we're going to be creating in our CSS file. And then also I put an ID for each box, box 1, box 2, box 3, box 4, right? So when we create a CSS style for a ID, we use the hash code, right? Like that, right? We don't obviously use it here, but that's what we'll be using in our CSS, right? So let's go over to our CSS file. So here I actually did create some background colors for our boxes. And you see we've got box 1 through box 4 here. And I'm just going to uncomment this and hit Control S to save it. And as you can see, here's our different colors for each one, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, as you can see, this goes the complete length of the page. If I even make this larger, it will go to complete length as long as it's not restricted in some way, right? And as a review, these are all, as we just looked in our HTML, these are all div tags, right? And all div tags are block, right? The meaning that it will take up the complete length of the area that it can, right? So first here, we're going to go ahead and create our container, okay? In our container, so by default, like I was saying, display is always going to be block, okay? So we save this. It's not going to change this at all, right? But we do have other options with that, right? That's where the flex comes in. But for right now, first, before we change this container to be a flex container, we are going to go ahead and define our box elements here, okay? And let's give our box elements a width and a height, okay? So we want to do a width of, let's say, 100 pixels and a height of 100 pixels, okay? And just to make things easier to see, let's change a couple other things on here as well. Let's change our font size to be, let's make it 5EM. And if you recall, as another review here, 5EM is basically going to be 5 times greater than the default one, okay? So we hit save here. As you know, they're quite large now. Let's go ahead and let's align that to put it in the center, I guess, so it's easier for us to see. All right, let's save that. So there you go. Okay. Now, just wanted to very quickly make sure we understand that these are the block level items, right? They will stretch the entire length as long as they're not constrained, right? So by us putting a width and height, we're constraining them, correct? And there we go. So so right now this is not a flex. There's nothing in here that makes this a flex box, right? To make this a flex box, we basically just change this right here to flex. We save that, and as you can see, it changed over here on the right hand side. So by default, flex has two different basic positions, either row or column, okay? By default, flex has a flex direction of row. As you can see, all of our numbers here are on the same row, right? So if we actually do, let's do flex direction, and let's put this as row. As you'll see, nothing's going to change on the right-hand side and on the web page itself because that's the default anyhow, okay? So if we change this, though, to column, and we save it, we'll see that it goes from top to bottom, right? It's one large column, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So real quick, so you understand, there's a main axis and a cross axis, right? And let's go over that real quick. So if your flex direction is row, right? We had this row originally. Flex direction is row, then the main axis is from left to right, okay? The main axis is left to right. If your flex direction is column, your main axis is from top to bottom. So it's flipped, right? Flex direction rows left to right. If it's a column, your main axis is top to bottom, okay? But then there's also the cross axis, and it's just the opposite of what the other one, the main one is, right? The cross axis for a row is going to be top and bottom, and the cross axis for a column is going to be left to right, right? So back to here, we've defined this. I don't think I saved this. No, I did. Okay, so here's your row. So your main axis is left to right, and the cross axis is top to bottom, okay? We changed it back to column, just quick. So here your main axis is from top to bottom. Your crossed axis is going to be left to right, okay? You can also reverse your flex items by changing column here to column reverse. And if you see on the right hand side, we're going from 1 to 4. If I save this, it changes from 4 down to 1, right? It's reversed. Same thing with row. We changed this to row reverse. And now we're going 4, 3, 2, 1, right? Now let's talk about the property justify content, right? So with justify content, we have different options here, okay? By default, it's flex start by default, okay? And so you'll see I save this, there's no change over here, right? No change on this, on the right-hand side web page, right? If we change this, start to flex end, right? As you can see, it moves it all the way over to the right-hand side, right? All the way to the end, right? We can also change this to center, and it will put it in the center of the container. Okay. Now there's also some ways to take care of spacing, right? And we can do space around. Let's take a look at that. Okay. We can do space between. So that's a little different. You know, these are up on the edge. These are spaces between, like here, right? Between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, right? So there are differences there, right? And we can also do space evenly. And so it's going to be even before and after each flex item. Okay. So we were looking at justified content to apply to our items on our main axis here, right? So let's go ahead and look at our cross axis, right? So to do that, let's make a couple changes to our container here. Let's put a border here, okay? And we'll make it 10 pixels, solid, and then let's make it black. Okay, and what else we want to do here? Let's also let's do a height of 90 VH. And let's save that. Now we've got a border around our container here, okay? Let's get rid of this. And let's do align items. So the align items changes things on the cross axis, okay? So by default, the default one is flex start. And so you won't see any difference here on the right-hand side on the web page. Okay. And then there's also flex. Oh, sorry. There's flex end. And you'll see here, puts it all, aligns it all the way to the bottom. There's also flex, then there's also center. Right. I'll put it in the middle of the page, right? And the other one is baseline. And this one, you won't see any difference unless we make a little bitty change here, okay? So let's change the font size here to something small, 10 pixels maybe. make it a little bigger than that. So what baseline does is it actually aligns it based on your content here. So you see the bottom of your 2 here is going to line up with this 1 here, right? Let's make it a little, let's even make it a little bigger here so you can see this. Hopefully this helps. I'll make this even bigger. As we make it bigger, you can see it aligns with the bottom of your content here, right? So this is baseline. So your content, your little box here is going to align based on your content, and it's going to align here with the bottom, right? Okay. Now let's go ahead and talk about flex wrap. Let's go ahead and let's remove that. And let's remove that. Get back to that. Let's go ahead and look at flex wrap now. Let's go ahead and clean some of this up here. Get rid of this font size. And remove our So first thing we want to do is go ahead and create enough boxes here, flex boxes, so that flex items, so to speak, so that we can see it wrap. Okay, so let's go in here. Let's copy and paste this. We have some more. So you can see they're all on one line here, right? Even if I make this bigger, or smaller, they're still going to be all on one line, right? So what we want to go ahead and do here is let's change this to flex wrap. And let's choose wrap. Now, as you can see, it went ahead and wrapped it all the way to into the next line down, right? And we do got some spacing here. I can show you how we can get rid of that. But before that, let's look at, we can also use wrap reverse. You can look on the right hand side on the web page and you can see the difference on that. So it went ahead and reversed everything, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then it wrapped all the way over to 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, right? So now let's go ahead and back to the wrap one. And as you see, we had all the space here. Wrap can also be used with aligned content, okay? And so if we use aligned content with flex start, it will get rid of that spacing, okay? We can also use flex end here, right? And it also got rid of that spacing, right? 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, okay? We can do align the content to center here. Also can do space around, space evenly. And this is just something you have to play with. You know, you just want to get in here, you want to try this different combinations and see what works out best for you, okay? And so you understand all the different options as well. Also, to get some spacing, we can, let's put this back to flex start. Save that. And here's another property we can use. We can use this column gap. Let's set this to say 1 EM. And as you can see, it puts a gap in between each column, right? And also we can use column, we can use row gap and do the same for that, right? And you can play around with that. Another thing we can do, now I'm going to go ahead and show you align self. First, we need to do a little cleanup here to get rid of a few things. Let's get rid of all of that out of our container. And save that. And let's go ahead and remove these additional boxes that we created. So here on just this individual, this was one of the IDs, the first box ID here, right? We're going to go ahead and use the align self property, okay? And by default, it's start, okay? Flex start. Which really makes no difference, right? Because that's the default, right? But we can also do center, right? As you can see, it moves it down to the center. And we can also do end, which is flex end here, and moves it down to the bottom of the container, right? So, we can do this on any of these. Let's do this. Let's do the first one, flex start. So the second one, center. And then let's do the third one, flex end. So as you can see, the first one is start, second one is center, third one is end. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the order property. Let's remove our align cells here. Get back to our base page. So basically the order property has two options, okay? It can be 1 or -1, okay? By default, it's -1, okay? So we're putting this on box 1 here, right? -1. Now if we change this to 1, watch what happens to the first box. It will put it at the end of the row, right? If we change this for a different one, let's get rid of that. Okay. Let's order put -1 for the second one. It's going to put it at the beginning of the row. We change it to a 1, it's going to put it to the end of the row. Okay. So that's basically what -1 and 1 does, right? -1 puts the element to the beginning. 1 puts the element to the end. Okay?